Hello, listeners, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj,
And my name is James.
and for one day only for you all, we're not going to revolve around Fantasy Premier League. We're taking a little dive down into the Championship, James.
Have you been relegated yet? Planet
there's
EFL.
there's every chance. Look, to the listeners, we're recording on Wednesday. If we beat Burnley today and we beat Norwich, we're done. Mathematically, I think we'll almost be there. I think Villa lose another game and we're done. So,
You'll be fine, mate,
no,
catching the break.
we're not going to be in the Championship next season. But
Congratulations.
we're going to be talking about Wigan Athletic today, James.
One
And
club who are in the Championship, we don't know if they will be next year or not.
exactly, who many listeners will have seen in the news were put into administration last week. And I'm not sure to what extent people do know what has happened and what has happened. It's interesting, obviously, in preparation for this podcast, we've been doing our research and digging around, and I seem to feel that compared to Berry, for example, and the Steve Dale story, that the Wigan Athletic story had been in the media much more. And you said to me you weren't quite sure if it had. So do you think it's still the administration story for Wigan Athletic is still not majorly mainstream and not enough people have been talking about
I
it?
can't believe that it's not the main headline on Sky Sports News every day.
Mm.
Genuinely. We were so obsessed with the restart of football generally in Premier League, and they obviously want to push their coverage. I mean, I watched an hour of Sky Sports News last night, and it got mentioned about minute 45. So hang on a minute. This is like the biggest story in the country at the moment, and I just don't know why they're not screaming about it. Perhaps because I don't know, they've got so much coverage of the EFL themselves that they want to be seen to be impartial, don't want to be criticising the EFL. I think that might be the problem, which we'll come on to later in the
I do think
podcast.
that you're touching on something really interesting, because as we go into the story about Wigan, the role that the EFL have to play within this is astonishing, and their lack of action, their total inaction, is actually a real concern. So we're going to talk about the backstory of how Wigan have got to where they are, what's happened in the last 18 months, and more specifically the last 4 to 6 weeks in terms of ownership, why they've ended up in administration, and what the impact is, and what it tells us about the championship and football financing and football money in general. Because where you're talking, James, about it being the biggest story, this is such a big red flag that is being waved right now of, hang on a second, football could self-destruct because of the financial way that so many clubs and the game are being run, but it's kind of being brushed under the carpet and ignored. It's like, what needs to happen? 5 clubs go into administration, 10 clubs in the championship go into administration. So we want to touch on all of these kind of points, but let's start with the backstory. And I suppose Dave Whelan, for many people, is Mr. Wigan, and he ended up owning the club for 23 years, James.
What goes a little bit further back with Wigan, and it kind of part relates to when we had discussions during lockdown, we looked at a few clubs and a few scenarios. I mentioned a number of clubs like Charlton, for example, that I was particularly concerned about. And I highlighted that was really concerned about clubs in the northwest of England, because you've obviously got United, City, Liverpool, Everton, etc. And there are so many other clubs that are quite well supported. Blackburn, Bolton, Burnley, and then you've got that lower tier of club as well. And actually, Wigan are underneath that tier. I think it's very easy for those who have lived through just the Premier League era to forget that this is a football club that didn't play in the Football League until 1978. Actually won in to get into the league via a vote against Southport. And as you're right, Dave Whelan took over in 1995, brought in the Three Amigos, which included Roberto Martinez, who obviously managed the club, and then slowly built through the leagues to, incredibly, in this really nice new stadium, which was originally called the JJB and then later the DW after Dave Whelan. Found itself in the Premier League in 2005 and didn't just disappear instantly. They survived for 8 years, and as they went, they won the FA Cup on their way out, right? And I've got some fairy tale stories that other clubs of their size will never be able to tell. And that's a bit of the backstory of the club. But Wigan Athletic was not a club that was ever on my radar as one that would potentially be in financial trouble.
No, you wouldn't think so, just because of Dave Whelan's stewardship. I've got a soft spot for Wigan. It was my first ever Premier League away day with West Ham. I can't remember what it would have been, either 2006 or 2007. It was the quite close to the end of the season, and we went up there and we won 4-0. I went with my brother and Neil, a guy that we work with. We went down there for a
Stop
weekend,
up.
and
This is meant to be a serious podcast. You
no,
talk
I'm not
about
saying,
West Ham winning away
yeah,
4-0. I don't think so.
but when you went up there, it was, you could tell it's a very small town, but
Community club.
the stadium was big and imposing, and the fact that now the stadium is shared with Wigan Warriors Rugby League club, who by all intents and purposes are run particularly well. But yeah, they did well. It's a good quality stadium. The Northwest does have quite a lot of clubs that have gone into financial questionable states. You've got to chuck Blackpool into there. You've got to chuck Bolton into there. And you're right, it is a bit of a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to go back to your red flag comment, if we want to start there a little bit, like Bury should have been that was, there can be no bigger red flag than that. That should never have happened to that football club. And at that point, everything should have been done to realise that this situation can never, ever happen again. And I think we've all feared over the last couple of months that because of circumstances beyond anyone's control with COVID-19, that it was brought back into light again and clubs would potentially be in trouble. This isn't a COVID problem.
Oh, 100% not a COVID problem. Has nothing to do with COVID at all. I mean, the wider global economy might have something to do with it, but it starts in November 2018 when Dave Whelan, and bless him, look, he's 83 now, so he was 81 at the time, decided to sell the club because he had an offer coming in from the Philippines or the Far East, depending on whether you want to look at Hong Kong or the Philippines as the source of the money. And why wouldn't you? I think so many clubs have seen foreign money coming in as a great opportunity to invest in players and what have you. I remember when we had a billionaire from Iceland coming in to buy West Ham. I didn't know anything about whether he was a billionaire or not a billionaire, but just the thought and the concept of we're going to make it big time now because we got the money to buy players is so attractive to fans of football clubs, and it must have been here as well. So Dave Whelan sold out to these investors from overseas.
And how long ago, to focus specifically on what's happened recently, how long ago did the ownership of the football club change hands?
November 2018 was when Dave Whelan first sold the football club. And he sold it to a company called IEC, International Entertainment Corporation, who are an operator of hotels and casinos in the Far East, specifically Philippines. So the main owner of that organization is a guy called Stanley Choi. And he's famous. I put a tweet out a few days ago talking about how if you Google Stanley Choi, CHOI, 8 of the first 10 listings on Google's first search results are poker listings because he's a professional poker player. So you've got party poker and this poker and that poker. And he's a big time gambler and a big time poker player in the scene. And that's what he's renowned for. So it begs the question, why would somebody who's a big time poker player from the Far East want to invest in a football club in the northwest of England? For what reason?
Is that, I mean, I like a bit of poker, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners do. Obviously, Tony Bloom is running Brighton and Hove Albion extremely well, and he's famous for being a poker player.
Sure.
So is that necessarily a correlation there? I don't.
No, there's no correlation with poker. I'm just saying, look, the reality is that historically, throughout Dave Whelan's reign, and this is a really important fact, Wigan lost money. From the reports that you can read, they would have lost on average between 9 and 12 million pounds per year. And they did all throughout Dave Whelan's reign, even when they were in the Premier League, even when they were winning the FA Cup, they were losing money. And as it stands right now, 16 out of the 24 clubs in the Championship are losing money every year, right? So as a football club owner, you now know that you have to put your hand in your pocket to the tune of 10 to 15 million pounds a year to make ends meet. So if you're a local guy like Dave Whelan was, who's born and brought up in the area and understands the impact of the football club in the community, you've got an understanding of why he would want to put his hand in his pocket to put 10 to 15 million pounds a year into his local football club. Similar with Tony Bloom. I'm not sure what his background is in terms of his heritage with Brighton and Hove Albion, but if he's a boyhood fan of the club and he can afford to do it, I understand why he would want to do it. With somebody coming in from overseas, I personally feel like the only reason they would want to make that bet, to use poker terminology, would be if the club was going to then get into the Premier League, make the big time, and suddenly they're going to see some return on that investment. You're not going to tell me that Stanley Choi grew up on Wigan Athletic football or watching the Championship. He was born and raised in the Far East. He studied in Hong Kong. He went to university in America. So I just don't see how it doesn't fit into their wider strategy from my point of view.
No, I know what you're saying. I think if we could relate the two clubs here, Brighton and Wigan, a little bit, in terms of Brighton has, and I've mentioned this several times since they came up into the Premier League, has sizable growth in terms of where it is as a catchment area, no other local team, etc. Wigan's got all this competition in the Northwest, and I don't think if there's Wigan Athletic fans listening, I don't think they'll particularly mind me saying that historically, going back to the 90s, etc., it's a rugby town. Yeah. If you just, even if you said to me as a football fan, what do you know about Wigan? I'd have said, well, Jason Robinson, Martin O'Fire and Sean Edwards. That's what I would have said. I'd have said the Wigan team from the mid-90s. It's probably the best rugby league team I've seen, by the way, while we're at it. But Dave, if Wigan got back to the Premier League, and we saw this when they were in the Premier League, there is a definite ceiling there in terms of eventually you're going to go back down because you can't, with respect, grow into a football club that, I don't know, let's say, for example, that Brighton suddenly came into that money, that eventually in 15 years or so, Brighton might be able to get 50,000 in the ground. Now, that might seem unrealistic, but that's not a situation where I think Wigan would ever have the capability of getting to with that close proximity of particularly, say, the two Manchester clubs, for example. Yeah. So that I get in terms of why would you go and buy that football club?
Of course. But they did. And one of the things that we have no control over, and I think it's very hard, is you can't tell people what they can and can't spend their money on. If somebody wants to buy that football club, let them go and buy that football club. But the challenge and the problem here is I've talked about it with my own football club. I've got a good friend of mine, Johnny D, he's been watching West Ham for 40 odd years. And when we buy certain players that you'd think, why are we spending 20 million or 30 million on Joe Bloggs? He'll turn around to me and say, what do we care? It's not our money. It's the owner's money at the end of the day, right? If he wants to spend it, let him spend it. If he wants to bring more players into the club, let him spend it. And that mindset, quite often, I'm like, you know what? It's a fair point. They're multimillionaires. Let them spend it. And it's not my problem. And when owners want to spend money and spend their own money, it isn't your problem. When they stop wanting to spend that money, which is exactly what's happened here, trust me, it does become your problem. And that's exactly what's happened to the Wigan Athletic fans here.
So 2 weeks ago, the ownership physically changed hands, right?
Correct.
So what happened here?
So Stanley Choi owned International Investment Corporation, which is based out of the Philippines and is, like I've said, a hotel and casino operator. He then sold the club to a company called the Next Leader Fund, which is based out in the Cayman Islands. At the time that the transfer happened, Stanley Choi, the guy from International Entertainment Corporation, was a 51% owner of Next Leader Fund. So it feels like he sold it from one company that he is in control of to another company that he is in control of. The ownership of Next Leader Fund was then changed to somebody else, a guy called Al Young, who nobody knows anything about at the moment. And that happened very quickly. Straight after it was sold, it transferred to this guy. Now, the concern here is around the financial structure of the deal, where we talk about, up until this happened, the IEC had put in 28 odd million pounds into Wigan. That's what is shown on the paperwork and so on and so on, which is great. They put it in as an interest-free loan. As the owner of your football club, you want to put your money into your business to see it grow. So that's perfectly understandable. When it transferred to NLF, Next Leader Fund, that loan now was converted to a loan that now has interest on it. And that's where it starts getting a little bit murkier.
8%, wasn't it? Was the
Eight
number I
percent
saw? I think.
interest.
Yeah.
8% interest was put onto this money. However, at the same time, if Wigan defaulted on the repayments on this loan, it jumps to 20%.
Yep.
What's strange is if you own that business, there there is nothing to be gained from screwing over your own business by putting on extortionate rates of interest. Like you just bought this club, why is the first thing you want to do straddle it with debt when already it wasn't doing particularly well in the league, right? Why would you want to straddle it with debt? And these are now the areas where you're getting into murky questions about what's going on here with these owners. And then it comes back a second where we have to talk about the fit and proper persons test or owners and directors test or whatever you want to call it. So the rumor is, and I haven't seen definitive evidence either way, that when the move happened to the NLF, Al Young wasn't vetted and didn't go through the fit and proper persons test or the owners and directors test. And
And
so
this is in the last 2 weeks, right? Just to
this has
clarify.
all happened in the last month.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about one situation. So these guys, whilst they're owners of the football club, there are a board of directors and a management team and a lot of people in Wigan Football Club that have been running it day to day. 75 non-playing football staff have already been made redundant. And when we do research into this story, my heart's pulled in two ways. One is absolute heartbreak for what's happened here, and the other is frustration and anger. And the heartbreak is for the Wigan fans and the people that work in the club, and the frustration and anger is directed at the EFL, firmly at the EFL. Now, the administrators have come into Wigan. What's fundamentally happened is Al Young and NLF have said that we are no longer going to put any money into Wigan, but you've just taken it over. But we've just established that the club is losing somewhere between 100 and 200 grand a month, right? It's obviously got debt. Saddle on top of that, the fact that it's got no revenue coming in right now either. They would normally be reliant on match receipts, selling food, beverages. Not only that, the stadium is used for hospitality, weddings, all of that kind of stuff. All of that's dead, right? So they've got no money coming in, and now the owners said that he's not going to bridge the gap. So that's where they've got into this situation where we've got no money anymore to pay our bills. What do we do? And that's where administration has come into play. And the board of directors, who from all reports have been doing a very, very good job of running the club well, have had to call in the administrators.
I'm just a football guy, right? Because a lot of this will go over my head and it might go over some of the listeners' heads. So, from your expertise in finance, can you just try and sum up simply what they've tried to do here, or why you, or even
Okay.
why you think
Sure.
that this has happened? Why have they moved the ownership of the club 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever, basically seemingly with the goal to me of putting it into administration and doing a runner?
The That's the question that is still very much in the air. Why would you do something like that, and why would you use mechanisms like the Cayman Islands and what have you? The overriding feeling is that the Stanley Choi and the investors have basically got bored, and they're no longer interested in pumping more money into Wigan Athletic. You've got to 28 million. They're probably thinking, you know what? Through this, we're going to have to stick another 5 or 10 million to get through this crisis. Sod this for a laugh, and decided just to cut their losses and run. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with administration, liquidation, and what have you. If you run a business and you can no longer afford to pay your bills, i.e., you are insolvent, then there are two mechanisms available to you to wind yourself up or try and get out of that situation. The first is very straightforward. It's liquidation. Right? You literally declare yourselves bankrupt, call in a liquidator. He'll sell off all of the assets that you have as a football club, pay whoever he can, whatever he can, and call it a day. Right. So that would literally mean the end of Wigan Athletic if they were going to call in a liquidator. That's not that common a situation nowadays, because when a business is in a distress situation, it's normally in that situation for a particular reason that if you can fix that problem, the rest will it will be able to be saved. Do you know what I mean? So liquidation would be shutting the doors and that's it. Administration, on the other hand, we talked about it in the Berry pod, if you remember, is like putting pause on everything, right? Saying, hang on a second here. We don't have enough money to pay all the people that we owe money, which they clearly don't. If we call in the administrators, then the people that we owe money to can't come knock in anymore. And we've bought ourselves some time to sort that problem out. Either sell off some assets of the club to raise some money to pay these guys off, or sell the club as a whole to a new owner who can come in and pay all of those debts off, or what have you. So what has happened here is the board of directors have looked at the situation and said, right, okay, we can't pay our debts. We can't pay the players' wages. We can't pay the people we owe money to. And the major shareholder, the owner of the football club, is not going to put his hand in his pocket to help us out of this situation. Where do we get money from to pay our bills? You can't wave a magic wand or shake a money tree. We need to call in the administrators to put a hold on everything so that we can sort the situation out, find a new buyer, and then come out of this. Unfortunately, the rules of the EFL are an automatic 12-point deduction should you go into administration, which we'll come on to in a second. There's no case-by-case scenario on this. The 12-point deduction that's been imposed is an automatic EFL rule, and that's something that we need to discuss. So the administrators have been called in, everything's on hold, and they're trying to sort out the situation with Wigan to find a buyer that will come in and rectify and resolve the situation, pay off some of the debt, take the ownership of the club on. To date, they say that up to 50 people have come in and are interested in Wigan Athletic Football Club. The owner of Wigan Warriors Rugby League is part of the process. Dave Whelan is part of the process. But the problem with this, again, is like property developer vultures and so on and so on. The council, for example, who are ultimate freeholder on the stadium, said they are not going to let a property developer or a vulture come in to take the club on. They're so conscious of the fact that you need somebody that's got the best interests of the club at heart to come on and take the club on.
6 days ago, and I just point out that just the timestamp, I can't remember if we did or we didn't, but we are recording this Wednesday afternoon, and Wigan are playing in the Championship tonight. So unfortunately, we won't have the latest update in terms of their league position. But 5 days ago from when we're recording, there was a video that circulated online of current Football League chairman Rick Parry saying that he'd heard there was a large bet placed on Wigan to be relegated in the Philippines. Now, if we're talking about this £28 million involved, and these guys have done a runner, and the suspicion is that the best way to get them relegated is for this bet to go ahead and for the point deduction to be incurred. How big a bet do you think this is?
Well, this is the thing, right? Who would place a bet that big on Wigan, and who would take that bet? Who would honestly accept a bet?
I don't know. Allegedly, are we potentially saying that part of the ownership has put money to recover the losses already made, built up on this 28 million or whatever on the football club, and they have bet on the football club to be relegated, knowing that basically it's a sure thing?
Potentially, yes. But I mean, look, it's not a sure thing, right? Because the EFL do have it in their power to suspend the 12-point deduction or not impose the 12-point deduction pending investigation. You've got a lot of people in the area. Lisa Nandy is the local MP up there. You've got Andy Burnham, who's the mayor of Greater Manchester, fighting the case with the EFL to say you cannot impose this 12-point deduction because of what's happened. So I don't think it's the case, James, because it's quite a big bet to take. Say the EFL didn't impose that 12-point deduction and Wigan stayed up, then you've really shot yourself in the foot. And it's a bit of a strange one, really, because if you're in relegation, is the worst thing that could happen to Wigan from an investment point of view. Like if you're the owner of Wigan Football Club, you know that there's an exponentially lower value of clubs in League One, and getting out of League One will be very hard for them. So it does seem like forcing relegation would be shooting themselves in the foot. And it's also a bet that I wouldn't, if I was the owner and I was in debt that much, I wouldn't feel comfortable making that.
I think we've gone past the idea of comfortable. They've walked out in the football club, mate. I'm just saying theoretically, right? And we have to explain that what happens in terms of Asian betting markets are very, very different to what you would understand in terms of your local English bookmakers or whatever, right? Now, in the UK, your general max payout is like £1 million, right? So you couldn't even put on that sort of bet, right? Because you just get told no. what I'm saying here is Wigan suddenly started doing extremely well in the Championship this year when it looked like they were in big trouble. And the couple of occasions I've watched them this year, they've looked all right to me. They look like the sort of side I'd think, you're not in trouble. You're capable of actually pushing for top half. I think they've got a good manager there in Paul Cook, decent football club. So if it suddenly got to the position where they were looking like, I don't know, someone could get a bet on at 12-1 for them to get relegated, for example, well, it only needs £3 million out of 28 million already lost to cover the money that's been lost. No, that's part of my point. What's £3 million to these guys? Yeah, you're saying who would bet, but get yourself out of the mindset that it's me or you.
Who would take the bet?
Who would take the bet? Listen, some of the money that goes on in Asia, right, would blow your head, mate. Honestly, in terms of gambling.
That's an area where I don't have any understanding or knowledge. So obviously Rick Parry made this comment and it's very quickly been hushed up, or there hasn't been as much in the news about it or what have you since. But I'm sure there's something that may come out with that in the future. So yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think it's possible that happened?
Of course it's possible, yes. Yeah, I don't think it's impossible at all, yeah.
Why would Rick Parry be stupid enough to get himself caught on camera saying that?
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I think he's got insider knowledge of what's going on in the Philippines or wherever, by the way. And in terms of where I would worry most about Wigan and the current point deduction, so at time of recording, they're 6 points clear of relegation. If they finish above 22nd, where the bottom three go down, then they will get that 12-point deduction incurred this year, basically. Whereas, obviously, if they were to finish in the bottom three, they would start with that deduction in League One next year. So Wigan essentially need to finish more than 12 points clear of the bottom three. Should that 12 points be incurred as a time of recording, rather than 6 points above safety, they would be 6 points from safety with, I think, 4 or 5 games to go, mate. It would nearly be dead. That's part of the point here. When I say dead, it's a bad term, but I mean relegated.
Yeah. So the thing with the administrators is, if you look at some of the things they've said in the news reports and stuff, and administrators are by no means the saviors riding in on horseback and stuff, right? They're in it to make a buck for themselves as well. They haven't ruled out selling players to raise the money to pay off the debts. They haven't ruled out anything. Their job is to make sure their fees get paid, and that's the first and foremost. So, but what they have said, and this is what really upsets me, is that the club is really well run. It loses money, but most of the league loses money, but it's really well run. So if you went into, I've seen administration situations for businesses where you go in and you ask the owners, show us your invoices, show us your book, show us all your bank statements, and everything's a mess, right? And they're like, oh, I have no idea where anything is. Well, no wonder you're screwed. They've said that every bit of information they've asked from the club has been provided in a timely, organised fashion. Like, it's been run well. The directors have done a good job, and the backroom staff and the non-playing staff have done a good job. They lose money, but most football clubs, because of the game it is, are losing money. And that then just makes it sting that little bit more that they're going to potentially be in this situation. And so I think it leads us on to the conversation about the EFL. Because the EFL here just seems like what's the point of the whole fit and proper person financial test and all of this kind of stuff? Obviously, Stanley Choi passed that test back when the takeover happened in November 18. But we've seen with Steve Dale and various other owners that the test is not fit for purpose. And the Berry situation happened a long time ago. There was even an investigation, independent investigation by the Department of Culture, Sport, and whatever, right, about the fit and proper person test or owners and directors test, that it's not fit for purpose. We know it's not fit for purpose, yet nothing's been done about it. So where does the responsibility of ownership lie? Because the fit and proper persons test will check whether somebody has money and whether they haven't got a criminal record or whatever else it checks. But just because I've got the money doesn't mean I'm going to spend the money on the club. But the way I see it from Wigan's point of view is that we've found somebody that wants to buy the club. We need to get a rubber stamp from the EFL to say that he is a legitimate person to buy the football club, which we have received. It's gone tits up because he hasn't done what he said he was going to do. and the EFL have said, well, tough shit, now I'm going to give you a 12-point deduction. But it's like, hang on a second, you rubber stamped him. So you've rubber stamped him, but now it's gone wrong. You're going to punish me anyway. It just doesn't seem a fair way to go about it.
How
And if
have
they
they?
haven't rubber stamped Al Young, who's the new guy that's come in,
Yeah, exactly.
then why is it justifiable to put a 12-point deduction on them?
The 12-point deduction's not necessarily near there. The only thing I'd say to clarify on that is for the football fans hoping that they'll get this overturned. You kind of nailed it on the head there. The fact that they couldn't even investigate, and they've done no investigation to this change of ownership a couple
No,
of weeks ago, right? How are
no.
they going to investigate something that's going to clear that football club of wrongdoing? They're not going to get the point deduction overturned, mate. I'm afraid to say. So the fit and proper football test was brought in to basically stop, really, I'm not sure if it's the right example, but basically what happened with Portsmouth 10 years ago, right? Where it was a mess. They to hit administration in the Premier League, how fucking bad off have you got to be, right? And they've obviously fallen down the leagues and are making their way back up now. Now, that was brought in a long time ago. What happened to Bury, we talked about the red flags, right? Should never, ever have happened. And that should have been absolutely the point where we tighten this up and say, right, okay, that there's under no circumstance can any community ever lose their football club again. It's not acceptable. Bolton Wanderers were that close to going as well. Bolton Wanderers are a famous historical football club, right? With
That was Ken Anderson, right? That, that owned at the
I
time.
forget, to be honest. But Bolton and Bury nearly went together, right? Bolton got saved, Bury didn't. And the idea was, right, okay, this has been a crisis. Let's make sure we fix it up. And what you're telling me is that a couple of weeks ago, a football club has changed owner from one club, from one company that's owned by the same one guy, moved to another company with the same guy, and he's labelled the problems onto, I don't know, his wingman or something? Who the fuck is
Exactly.
Al Young?
Good question, James. Who is Al Young, and who suffers as a result of this boardroom merry-go-round? It's the fans
Yes.
and the 75 non-playing staff who've no longer got their jobs. All of this kind of stuff. It just seems crazy, and the problem is that the punishment that they're giving, it doesn't help. It's like the kid's drowning. Don't tell him off for drowning. Throw him a rubber ring first, and then let's figure out what the bigger problem is here. And I just don't feel like they've taken any responsibility for the bigger situation and the wider problem at all, which is that 16 or 17 of the clubs in the Championship, which is one of the most followed leagues in Europe. Is it the second most watched league in Europe?
It's top five in
Top
terms of
five. So
attendances, certainly.
how can three-quarters of the league be losing money? And as a result, then you've got the situation of ownership where what if an owner gets bored? Where is the safeguards for the club at
There
that
isn't.
point? So perhaps something along the lines of, okay, you're allowed to lose a certain amount of money, but if you're going to lose that money, you need to at least make sure you can bankroll that moving forward on a more regular basis. I don't know if they're checking the finances of a club year in, year out. I don't know to what extent financial fair play is fitting in. But this feels like a situation where the owners got bored. It's not that they don't have enough money or didn't have enough money, but the motivations behind owning and running that football club were very different, and they've gotten bored. But it's not. This is not. We've seen like Charlton Athletic have had a bunch of issues with their ownership, and it's changed hands. And the fans are not happy with the owners there, and the owners' motivations for buying the football club are not about the community in what would it be, South East London. You've got Bolton have these problems. Blackpool and Ian Royston or whatever his name is.
At Blackpool, yeah.
Blackpool. People are not happy with him and his ownership and his motivations behind owning the club. And these are all little signs of where clubs were. Sunderland and Ellis Short was at Sunderland, and
Yes.
the own fans went against him because he got tired of pumping money in. And I can understand it, man. If I had a business and every month I was chucking in hundreds of thousands of pounds, there is a point where you're like, what am I doing this for? And people are doing it because the lure of the Premier League is a big gamble. I feel like people are buying football clubs as a bet. If we can just get it right and make it to the Premier League, the big bucks will come. not
They're all chasing.
necessarily
They're all chasing the same dream, and that's why
correct.
so many of them are in monster trouble in
Yeah,
terms of to move away slightly from Wigan for a moment and to the pandemic. Like championship football clubs are in a bad place.
very bad.
How much money have they lost over the last 12 months or so? I think you know the number, don't you, between them?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I'll get it. But you're talking hundreds of millions of pounds, James.
Yes, between them, yeah, comfortably.
How can that be? But
But I don't know how they're surviving then.
yeah, it's like, and then you look at the flip side of the football pyramid, and what we're going to losing in a month is like a couple of players' salary at Manchester United or Man City or what have you. So the disparity is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is why it's a ticking time bomb where there is a risk that 4 or 5 or 6 clubs go. Now, you can brush one club under the carpet or deal with removing one club from the league. Like Bury were taken out of the league, fine, we'll play 2 less games this season and what have you. You can't take 5 teams out of the league. Suddenly you're talking about a whole different problem. And it's going to get bigger. Like we're talking about the championship. You think League One's any better or League Two's any better? They're not,
No,
unfortunately.
that between bottom half of championship and top half of League One makes me really nervous, mate.
Of course.
Really, really nervous.
There are other clubs that have understood how to do it well. Look at Burnley. They haven't overspent. They go down. They're comfortable and they'll come back up and what have you. Look at Norwich. I don't fear for Norwich going back down into the championship because they haven't gone crazy. But on the flip side, Villa has spent nearly £100 million before in the summer leading up to the Premier League, and there's a
What
very
happens if
strong
their boy
chance.
gets? What happens if their boy gets bored?
Exactly. So it's a very difficult situation where I understand the situation with the ownership of football clubs because it comes back to something I said earlier in the show, James. I can't tell you what you can and can't spend your money on. If you are a 100 millionaire and you want to go and buy a football club and they want to sell you the football club, who's the EFL or the Premier League or the FA to say you can't buy that football club because 2 years down the line you might get bored and then you're going to stop funding it. So I don't know the solution to that situation, but I think the problem is that where the impact for these guys, like Stanley Choi, if 75 people in Wigan have lost their job, or 5 pubs have to close because the stadium's not there because no one's going drinking before the games or what have you, do you think it affects his radar at all?
Can these
It
people
does.
not be held accountable for that? The fact that that's happened, or does it
You
just
see,
not matter? Business
they
has gone to pot. That's it. What can you do? Is that what it
exactly. I
is?
mean, they haven't broken the law in any sense unless they've committed any kind of fraud. Now, if they committed any kind of fraud, where are you looking for this fraud? Are you looking in Wigan Athletics books, or are you looking in the Cayman Islands, or are you going to Hong Kong? Which police force's job is it to investigate any kind of fraud that's happened? It's very tricky to figure it out. I don't think that there's been much that's been done that's illegal. I just feel like it's a little bit immoral and people haven't thought about it. And you look at the video that I shared that was on YouTube from November 2018, where IEC come in and they talk about the legacy of the club and how they fell in love with what Dave Whelan had built, a small time club and stuff. It's all BS, isn't it? At the end of the day,
Yes.
because they didn't realize that they were going to have to that maybe they didn't think they would have to put their hands in their pocket as much as they have. Now, where we're talking about has COVID had an impact? Sure, it's made people a little bit more shrewd with what they're doing with their money, no doubt about it. But would this have happened without COVID? It maybe COVID was the trigger that they thought, hang on a second, we have to put more money in than we thought we would potentially have had to.
But then that doesn't explain the shift of ownership in the last month.
Yeah,
I don't. I
that's
can't get my head around it, mate. I
that's the
can't get my head
unknown.
around how it's been allowed.
Mm,
It seems like it's just set up to go A to B to C is administration, and D we're leaving.
yeah, the
That's it.
speed with which it happened as well. Normally, when it comes to business, you're paying people on 30 days credit and what have you. So from the owner telling the board of directors that he's not putting any money into going into administration happened very quickly, like 4 weeks. Whereas if you look at a business in the wider world, it'll be like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months that it will be going downhill, and then suddenly they'll have to go into administration. It doesn't happen as quickly as 1 month. So the debt's been building up for longer, and they've probably been promised money that is going to come in that hasn't. Then the change of ownership has happened, and then bang. they've had to pull the trigger on it because it's been very clear that they weren't going to get any more investment.
So this, our young, he made a statement on Tuesday, right? The EFL reckon they can't contact him or anyone else that's previously been owning Wigan Athletic in this murky water, right? They can't get hold of him. But a statement was released on Tuesday from him or his advisors, someone who works for him, whatever, saying that they're blaming COVID for what's happened. That is complete fabrication, mate, when they've moved the club.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Smoke and mirrors.
There has to be blood on the EFL's hands if something worse than the current situation, which is already horrendous, happens to this football club and it dies. Because they allowed that to happen, right? That's on them. The lessons had to be learned from Wigan and what nearly happened to Bolton. Same fucking region of the world as well. And you're telling me that went through 2 weeks ago and I just can't get my head around it. So just give me an answer that makes me understand why the EFL let that happen and how they can, Rick Parry and his mates can now make excuses to what's happened.
There isn't an answer, James. So it feels like if the EFL are taking the responsibility of delivering punishments to clubs for falling foul of the financial rules that the EFL have set, the rules have to be there that for the safety and the protection and the growth of the football clubs, right? They can't be wishy-washy rules. But the fact is that the rules are not fit for purpose. If the rules are not fit for purpose, why is it fair to administer a punishment against your own rules if the rules were crap in the first place? That's what I don't like about this. It's like, I don't know if the stupid handball rule now is an example of it, where people are getting punished, getting goals or losing goals because of this rule, but the rule's crap in the first place. So I think just stop.
The rule in terms of the point deduction is very much there to kind of prevent from teams trying to go beyond their means, etc., and placing a club into too much saddled debt to chase that Premier League dream, for example. It's been put in place again because of what happened with like Portsmouth and Leeds and stuff like that to protect against these clubs from being in a position where, you know, how does a club like Leeds United ever get into fucking administration, for example? That's why the point deduction was put into place to stop people just pissing about with these football clubs. And the fit and proper test was then put in to make sure that people then owned and governed our football clubs in our pyramid system, which is more important to us than it is to, with respect to people in other countries and their pyramid systems, but it just doesn't matter. But in our country, the pyramid of football is essential to its football. And that's why it really annoys me. The fit and proper test was put in place to stop people coming in who, frankly, could piss about on a football club. Now, I know what you're saying. Someone can come in and they can do what they like with their money, right? Spend it, don't spend it. For every Choi, isn't it? The owner. What's his name?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got
Stanley
you a glass
Choi.
of water. Stanley Choi, yes, sorry,
Choi,
mate. Yeah. For every Stanley Choi, there's a Sheikh Mansour, right? So I understand there's a level in terms of knowing what will or won't work, you know. But then we can all see that these guys are going to take over Newcastle if it happens, right? They ain't going to piss that football club into the ground. It's fairly clear, right? No. They're doing it to try and make Newcastle United a better football club, whether ethically or whatever. That's a different podcast. This is shady. It's shady. And it should even go back to the start of literally questioning again. Why does someone on the other side of the world want to buy Wigan Athletic Football Club?
Mm-hmm. What are the motivations behind it?
That's the alarm bell before anything else. Why Wigan? Why would, and I don't mean that badly to Wigan, but Wigan's status now as a championship club really is where it should be at its top level. Wigan is not really built to be a Premier League football club. It doesn't have the fan base, etc., in the background. It also doesn't mean that it doesn't matter, right? They're there where they are now on merit, like when they got to the Premier League. It was on merit. You might say that Dave Williams spent more than other clubs were spending, right? But at that time, there was nothing illegal about anything they did, okay? We've allowed, and I feel like it's we've allowed someone to come into our football pyramid from the outside and leave a football club potentially to die. And people have lost jobs and players are going to lose careers and a community is potentially not going to have its football club, which is the worst thing of all, of course.
The biggest frustration here is also how the punishment doesn't help. Like, if Wigan are in the situation because of Stanley Choi, But whoever comes in next, and I'm really hopeful actually that whoever does come in is going to be a local person or somebody that has the best interests of Wigan and Wigan Athletic and the stadium and the staff and what have you in their hearts, right? But putting the club into with a 12-point deduction into a lower league is not going to help that situation because it's going to make it less of an attractive investment opportunity. And so that somebody wanting to come in and buy it is going to be less of interest to them. And I just don't feel like the punishment here helps. And I'll be honest with you, in what you can see in the local media, and I urge anyone to jump on YouTube and run a search on Wigan Athletic administration. And I think it's really worth giving a shout out to a young guy called Jay Whittle, right? Jay Whittle six on Wigan on Twitter. He was the one that wrote an open letter, but he's also been interviewing on YouTube all the local politicians and people to try and support the cause. People in the local area seem to be speaking up and trying to do a good job and whatever they can to save the club. And really see, I see these interviews and I see these fans, and my heart is like crying out for them. You seem like such genuine people, and yet the EFL, who have the power, are doing sweet FA, and that's what's really winding me up a little bit. Where I see local politicians, local business people, and the fans with a genuine, heartfelt desire to want to save their football club, and the authorities are not helping. And if we don't find a more robust way of checking the financial health of these clubs, it could happen more frequently and more often. And the issue with COVID obviously has put a lot of clubs into precarious situations. Just hoping that that ticking time bomb doesn't explode in the next 3 to 6 months, where it's not Wigan, but it's 5 or 6 or 10 clubs, because that will be really catastrophic and really difficult to come back from. There's talk about bringing forward parachute payments and solidarity payments and all of this kind of stuff, but it's all talk right now. The EFL have talked about paying out some solidarity payments earlier. The Premier League putting their hands into their pockets. I think clubs need it right now. they need it sooner rather than later. So it's got to be dealt with.
Remove COVID from it from the moment. What can we do, or what should be done to make sure that this never happens again? Because
I've been thinking about
the fit and proper test, obviously, the EFL ain't capable, and to be honest, there ain't many football governing bodies that are capable of washing their hands properly, right?
I've been thinking about this, and it's funny you mentioned finance and expert earlier. It's not my real expertise, but I can understand numbers a little bit. So, what is a suitable penalty or safety net to stop it happening for owners? And there are a couple of things that come to mind. Like, one is making sure that owners have enough money in the bank, or the club has enough money in the bank to cover at least 12 months forward worth of losses. If football clubs are going to make losses, which I don't think it's going to be easy to turn around overnight from them to be loss making to profit making, then owners have to, at the end of every season or every financial year, whatever it may be, ring fence the money for the next year's worth of debt based on how much debt you're in right now. At least then you've always got a 12-month runway for any club. You know that you've got 12 months in moving forward as a potential safety net. The other thing could be around the extent to which owners can lend money to their own clubs and charge interest and withdraw that money back. If you put money into your football club, you shouldn't be able to charge more than a fair 3-4%, maybe potentially interest rate. It will stop people trying to extract money back out at an extortionate interest rate. But the other thing is also that perhaps you lose your money. If you put money into your football club, you can only extract it a certain way. But if that club then goes into administration, I'm sorry, Mr. Stanley Choi is now in for £28 million. I don't know what's been repaid or not been repaid. I think some of it has been repaid.
But he shouldn't get a penny, should he? That's how I should
not. Exactly. If you put money in and you walk away for whatever reason, your bet
it's dead.
Is dead, I'm afraid. So these are the kind of things that they need to think about, and I don't know where it fits into legal financial law, FSA regulations,
I
and
think,
that kind of stuff. But there's got to be something along the lines of if you're buying a football club in the way that we've talked about, which is making a bet to make it to the big time. That bet, if you lose that bet, you lose that bet. You don't then get a second stab, a second bite of the cherry to get your money out or what have you. You don't.
I think we're at a tipping point with a lot of clubs in this country who are at lower end of Premier League and potentially upper ends of League One. There's a lot of shady stuff going on. We never really dived into a conversation we had about 6 months ago about clubs like Aston Villa moving
Derby County.
and Derby County moving the stadium from one company to another. I mean, something's not right. It's another one. It's alarm bells. Suddenly, I would, if it was under my jurisdiction, I'd be like, right, well, I want to know the ins and outs of this and why is this happening? Because I think Villa has moved, and I'm sorry to use them as the case, it's just the one I know. I think they moved Villa Park from one company and then back again.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to hide the fucking debt, mate. That's what it looks like to me. And I'm an idiot. I don't know shit about finance, but that just looks clear and simple. I would want to be all over that and understanding why that's happened. But we're not doing that, are we? And
No,
eventually everyone's going to come out in the wash, I think. There'll be points deductions everywhere.
Yeah, it is a concern. These are the red flags where I think the FA, EFL, whoever it may be, Premier League, have to take a step back and say, you know what, we've been cashing in, we've been making money with all these lucrative sponsorship deals, we've been making money from all these television deals. We've seen the growth of football is phenomenal in this country, but where does that growth come from? What's it driven by? And ultimately, it's the fan base. It's you and me who like to watch football, watch the games, pay our £30 a month Sky subscription, buy our 6, 7, 800, and the rest.
What fucking deal did you get?
Season ticket. Well, I don't know. You know, it's grassroots, right? And we can't lose track of that. And they're the people that get affected when this kind of thing happens. So the financial regulation. I mean, would you be happy with more financial regulation taking away some of the big name signings that might join the league or the high salaries or what have you? I feel like I would sacrifice big name stuff at the top end of the game if it meant more stability throughout the rest of the game. I don't need the big boys to be having the big boys. I don't need Man City to have every Galactico under the sun. I want the whole football, the pyramid that it's built on, to be stable more than I want that. Because do you remember football in the 80s and 90s and muddy pitches and stuff? We still used to watch it. It was just fun for different reasons. Yeah? I don't need ticky-tacky. I just want
Listen,
the victories.
This is why the pyramid matters, right? Because for every Galactico that Manchester City has, every now and again, a club like Wigan Athletic will beat them in an FA Cup final. Or every now and then, a club like Wigan Athletic will beat them in an FA Cup fifth round on a Monday night in front of like a national audience on the BBC, yeah?
Yeah.
So Wigan Athletic matter. Wigan Athletic gave us those moments that we'll remember forever. And do you know what? In 50 years, it's probably all that people might remember about Wigan Athletic as a general. But it doesn't matter.
But they will.
They've got their moment in time, right?
They have.
And everybody's got their own moment in time. Ask a Northampton fan like our friend FPL Cobbler about winning the playoff final last week when they were 2-0 down, got pissed all over in the first leg, and then have won 3-0 away from home and then 4-0 in the final, right? That's their story. All these clubs have their own stories and their own history. My concern a little bit more is to go back to the debt of championship clubs as a whole. Deeper than the FFP, something needs to, I think, be done on top of what clubs are running themselves to say, this is what you can and can't do. I know what you're saying about sort of having that 12 months, what's the term you use, Suj?
Kind of a ring-fenced slush fund.
Ring-fenced to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
Now, the easy one to bring in, for example, I think a lot of people will suggest, and we haven't mentioned it yet, is a salary cap.
Yeah,
the thing I always fear with a salary cap, if you say, right, okay, across the championship, no one can earn more than £5,000 per week, for example. There's a couple of problems with that. One is, as soon as they get into the Premier League, they're going to disappear straight back on their arse. Because the quality they'll have in the squad, they will need to buy a whole new squad, right? Because the players earning 20 grand a week now in the championship are just going to go and earn it in mid-table in France or something. And the other problem is, it's not going to stop owners chasing the dream and still paying a shitload of fortune for these same players and having bonus incentive.
Salary caps always operate as a percentage of your revenue or what have you, but the discrepancy between a Leeds United and a Barnsley in terms of revenue is so big that if the salary cap is as a percentage of, it just means the haves will have and the have-nots won't have. That's very, very difficult. I think the thing is, right, we talked about your glory night in Ajax and all of this, and Manchester City and stuff last season. And the thing with those highs is now you've got, and I don't want to rub it, but you've got lows. You need the lows help you understand the highs. And when you've got the lows, you
Absolutely,
can
yeah.
look at the highs and stuff, right? If you look at the football pyramid and you consider the Man Cities and the success stories of Manchester United as the highs, it can't come at as a detriment of these clubs going bust as the lows.
No,
We
it's
can't have
they've
that
still got to
imbalance.
beat someone to have their own highs.
Exactly, and I just feel like at the moment we've lost that balance, and unfortunately, from what we can see from the outside, it's the people that should be taking control and responsibility who are the stewards of the game, the EFL, the FA, and the Premier League, that are the quiet ones that aren't doing anything. And that's what's really concerning in this kind of situation at the moment that we are with Wigan. And that's why we've talked about, I've said to you before, this is self destruction of football. If this is ignored, like Berry was ignored, we are months away from it happening on a big, large global scale.
I feel like the EFL got a bit of a pass for me with Berry because the one thing I did feel in the final couple of weeks were I feel like the EFL were trying to do everything to try and save that football club. I really do believe that. And I think what they encountered was a man who was just a compulsive liar, right? Who was just never going to release what he, in Steve Dale, in terms of release, what he actually had in funds.
Yeah.
Where there's a deeper problem is, and I'm not necessarily on board with salary cap as such, but forgive me, I forget the Rochdale owner who was speaking when we went into COVID. And I think he said 85% of the club's revenue goes onto wages. That can't be right, surely. Is that right, Suj? I mean,
It's not
they're a small
uncommon.
business in football terms, but they're not a small business, if that makes sense.
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. I mean, the business we both been working together. It's about 40% of our overheads are not 40% of our revenue. Sorry, 40% of our costs. So as a percentage of revenue is obviously much less. Might be about 20, 25%, something like that. So that's a massive discrepancy there when you
Yes.
talk about an everyday business. So it is a concern, and also the spread between so much of that is players. So 85% is going on to salaries, of which 80% is players and 5% is the rest of the staff. And that's where the discrepancies come in. I mean, it's really concerning. I think, if nothing else, our listeners that listen to this podcast, I'm hoping that some of you will have seen the news on the BBC website and have a read up about it and some of the numbers, because it's really important. But we need to give this story as much visibility and let the people in the EFL and stuff know that football fans, the everyday football fans, which is the majority of us, don't want to see this happen. I feel for Wigan. I can't say I've got any history with Wigan other than that one time I went there, but I see it that in their fans. I mentioned that guy Jay Whittle Six and his YouTube channel and stuff. You just see it. It's just heartbreaking. I have to think about it happening to my own club. Is just not something that you want
Dave,
to see on
what you
anyone.
said about the community spirit, in terms of, I think they've already raised over £100,000 to
Yeah,
basically pay for the players' expenses so they can finish the season,
yeah,
basically.
it's incredible. Yet that 100 grand is scratching the surface. It basically covers the coach trips or something. That it really, it's not going to help the club get out of what they need to. So you know what? Like I don't. If you can share this pod, go and find whatever content you can, share it, do what you can to give this story some airtime because I think it really needs it. And we've got to not just focus on the Premier League and our FPL teams and stuff because football's bigger. You
I
know,
think,
life and death. Football's
of
bigger than
course,
that.
no, absolutely. Listen, the one thing, to sum it up better than anything, right? Mourinho feels like he's killing me inside. I mean, VAR and Mourinho in the same season, I do feel a bit dead inside some days. But I still always have the hope that next week will be better.
Yeah,
There has to be
yeah,
next week.
yeah.
And to be no next week in football is...
2 weeks ago,
I still can't get my head around what happened with Berry. I can't get how it was allowed to happen. I think, and my gut instinct on this is that Wigan will come out of this the right side because I think if the
I do
worst,
as well.
I
I
think
do as well.
if the worst comes to it, Dave Whelan will put his hand in his pocket.
Yeah, and there's other people. The guy Ian, I forget his surname, but he owns Wigan Warriors. Is looking at it, and he understands the club and the stadium and what have you.
The only concern I'd have in terms of the rugby league club getting involved is 20 years ago, Wigan, long before they become Wigan Warriors, as in the rugby league team, were far bigger in that town than the football club. And actually, it might have leveled out a bit. And in terms of the finances comparable to rugby league and football, I mean, we're talking about a completely different game, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be a bit concerned in terms of what their level of sustainability is. But I think the idea of, I don't want to say merger because I hate that word, but the idea of them working under some sort of umbrella, they obviously already play in the same stadium, etc., is a short-term solution that I think would potentially benefit everybody to get it in the right track. There is the possibility that the rugby league club will get saddled with the debts instead of the football club, by the way, and that's
they wouldn't
a
be
whole
able to,
different conversation.
They wouldn't be able to even
No.
touch. Like rugby league players earn like 80, 100 grand a year, not even a week, mate. So
no, but I don't know what the punishments are in rugby league if you're £30 million in debt.
That's
compared
true.
to football. I don't know if there's governance on that. Oh, here we are a year from now talking about rugby league. That'll never happen.
What you said there, James, though, is right in that I think Wigan will come out of the right side because that so many people from the council and local authorities and fan supporter groups and what have you have an eye on this. It may not be making national news or Sky Sports news, but locally the people really have a finger on the pulse. And so I have faith that they will actually not let it happen again. And we have to keep our fingers crossed.
It's making the news, but it's like, Wigan Athletic have gone into a 12-point administration. Well, they're now 6 points from safety.
It's because it's
and then back in the Premier League, it's not acceptable.
It's because the news story is about Wigan, when in fact the news story is about the financial situation of clubs in the Championship that could go into administration. And they're making it about Wigan when the bigger picture story is what I'm trying to draw attention to here is that it's a ticking time bomb that's much bigger than Wigan. It's the tip of the iceberg. Bury should have been the tip of the iceberg that made us realise what was going on, and it wasn't. All we can hope for, James, is that Wigan does finally get people to think about fixing this problem rather than brushing it under the carpet.
Well, I'm concerned that it won't. And the one painful thing for a lot of the listeners on this is for 90% of the listeners listening to this, your football club is big enough that you probably don't ever have to worry about this. But for 10% of you out there, next week it could be your club, right? It's bad because this with Wigan it just came out of nowhere, mate.
And on that very sad note, I'm afraid I don't think there's a positive way to end this podcast.
Hopefully they won last night.
Yeah, exactly. If we'd be obviously always welcome to your thoughts and comments on the stuff that we've discussed and how you think your club could or couldn't be affected. We'll be keeping a close eye on this story, so you never know once the season's over and we're into the summer break, if there is any more of an update and we can bring you more on what's happened. I think a short 20-30 minute podcast on it is definitely something that we'll be doing. As always, football first, FPL second. And so thank you again for tuning in and listening. And I hope it's been as enjoyable for you as some of the other specials that we have done. You know where to find us. I'm at Suj James on Twitter, James at Planet FPL Pod. Do come and let us know what you thought and interact with us. We have other podcasts going out as well on our Patreon channel. If you're interested in supporting Planet FPL, we have a Slack channel, we have exclusive podcasts, we have discounts to live events, mini leagues, all of that kind of stuff. That's at patreon.com/Planet FPL. James, do you want to let the listeners know anything else that they can look forward to?
No, it feels almost wrong to be advertising FPL, but obviously we'll review game week 34 tomorrow.
Indeed, we will. Make sure you subscribe to Planet FPL wherever you are listening to your podcast. But most importantly, as always, stay safe. Ciao for now.
Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man, child.